Welcome to my thoughts on tape, outside the box with CB, St. Julian, and Mark here. I'm asking you to think, where did you acquire your knowledge? Is it your knowledge? And are you personally responsible for the knowledge you have acquired? Have you acquired knowledge of God? Okay. Well, this is to be the first episode published. This is to be the first published episode of Thoughts on Tape Outside the Box with CB, St. Julian of Mark here. And the reason that it will be the first published episode of Thoughts on Tape is I don't have time to write script and prepare for people's understanding and comprehension the details of this post. And I do normally like to produce my video documentaries with, premeditated scripts, which I have thoroughly vetted, or tried to. I'm not the greatest writer, nor am I the greatest grammar and proper grammar user by any means. Anyway, I got a text I looked at it. It was on February 19th from Jeff Conyers, who is an acquaintance from the province. Jeff Conyers, who's an acquaintance from the province Patrick County, Virginia. Patrick County, Virginia is owned and run by the primas of the Federal Republic of Germany, who have been perched on that mountainside and running the Babylonian horror cultural schools for our government since the 1960s. They own Congressman Moron Griffin, I call him. They own Congressman Moron Griffin. They own Senator Warren. They own every city and state legislative representative. Every lawyer, judge, and representative in this country today is a member in good standing with the bar, which means they are a Mason, a Freemason, and they are paid liars for the Crown Bar of London, the Crown Rule by Lucifer's crown and the synagogue of Satan. They are not lawyers, judges, and representatives. They are paid liars. Now, I put out a post recently about Jesus being a targeted goyim. Well, as I said, I got contacted by Jeff, and that was unusual. He's an acquaintance. He's not someone I would call a friend. Anyway, I thought it was rather unusual that he was contacted. And then I got an email on March the 13th. And I didn't notice the email, actually. It was rather odd. It's as if it was sent to me, but didn't show up in my box till days later than it had been sent. I don't know. I didn't catch it. I went back to it, and I saw it. It was from a woman. Her name is Jo. And I'm going to share that email in these posts. But the thing is, Jo contacted me about my property in Ararat, and Ararat, Virginia. That's a real interesting piece of irony when I tell the whole story, because the connections between Ararat and God and an apple orchard are far more deep than I had ever imagined or knew anything about before. Anyway, that's set aside. Jo contacted me about the property, and she contacted me very nicely about who I was and about what was going on. And let me pull up her inbox here. Pull it up. Anyway, so I can talk about it. Thought I had it up, but I guess I moved it or something. Her name is Jo Taylor. And she asked me if I was the Christopher Julian whose property was located in Ararat, Virginia, and I told her yes. And I'm hesitant these days. There's nobody in this world that I can trust anymore. After being targeted for 25 years and having pursued the U.S. government in multiple federal courts, having gone to local, state, and federal courts with racketeering allegations and been denied any hearing whatsoever. No real hearing. I was allowed one hearing where the judge, who was appointed by Ronald Reagan, the mafia judge, Reagan was mafia, and he was one of the first appointed judges in the state of Virginia. And he wasn't just appointed; he was appointed and then established his own district. Was established and given to him, and that's really to run mafia's clearinghouse operations in the 4th district. Anyway, I'm not going to get into depth on that right now. We certainly can't. The point is that Joe contacted me, and I made a videotape, Thoughts on Tape Outside the Box. Just started doing that for future development. I'm planning to start trying to tell the whole story behind what's happened to me, because I spent my time documenting how the government was corrupted and taken over by the mafia. And then I found out that, this is why I call myself C.B. St. Julian Molecare. I discovered that my ancestors, David and Peter St. Julian of Molecare, and from Toll House, France, and the Principality of Orange, were forced to leave Europe in 1679 aboard the Richmond. King David was murdered. His son was forced into exile in Dublin, Ireland. And all of his grandchildren and children of age, male, all of his male children and his elder daughters were forced onto the Richmond and sent to Charleston, South Carolina, to develop plantations for the King of England, King Charles II, and the proprietors of the Carolinas. But they were sent there on that ship as children and in indentured servitude to the crown of England. They were to be proselytized and persecuted until all of them were dead and their offspring were dead. Their teachings of Gallicanism were to be silenced forever. This corresponds with what Nietzsche said about illumination of the moral foundations of religion. Anyway, that being said, Joe contacted me, and I thought, well, when I put that on tape, it's something must be up with this property. Because here in less than a month, I've got 2 people contacting me regarding this property. And I've always known that at some point the people in the mafia would come after that property. In fact, the very day that I made an offer on that property, criminal forces in Patrick County stepped in to try and alleviate my ownership of that farm. They wanted to keep me from having it. And they worked diligently to try to stop that from happening. But then I managed to get past the criminal lawyers in the neighborhood and judges to purchase that property, because I knew that what was going on wasn't right. I mean, It was criminal. What was happening was criminal, and I was opposed to it, and I wasn't going to just take it sitting down. So I went forth to get my hands on that property. I had a little discussion with God about that beforehand, and that's a discussion for another time. But the thing is the day I wrote a contract on that property was the day the mafia criminals came after me to try to keep me from having ownership of it. It didn't stop there. In fact, it never stopped. The attempts at financial criminal extortion from the day I bought the property until the day I was forced to leave it never stopped. I went to court in the local courthouse in Patrick County, Stewart, Virginia. I went to the local courthouse in Stewart, and I made a case went to make a case before the judge. They refused me a fair hearing and criminally railroaded the case outside the court when they had no jurisdiction over it in the first place. That criminal activity is documented in detail in my third federal filing against the United States government for racketeering and the 2008 financial collapse. So my point is it's well documented fact that not only did the local general court judge violate criminal laws to railroad me from having a fair hearing on this land, that the state government backed him up as well, committing criminal acts of violating my rights to deny me any kind of fair hearing. I went to federal courts and filed federal class action lawsuits for RICO racketeering by the United States Department of Agriculture, who really plays a major role in the control of Patrick County, Virginia. But that's just a side note compared to the mafia's activities there. Anyway, that case, that's filed in that third federal court filing. So in the third federal court filing against the United States government for racketeering and the 2008 financial collapse, along with Wall Street, is documentation and evidence, not just documented, but documented evidence that these gentlemen committed crimes in denying my rights to a fair hearing. So the point of all this is that Joe's telling me that she has information that the property is about to be auctioned off on the courthouse steps. And I want to make it very clear that I represent the kingdom of David, the house of Jacob, and Judea, Jesus Christ. I represent the kingdom of David, Simon Peter, the house of Jacob, and Judea. I represent the kingdom of David, the house of Jacob, Judea, and Jesus Christ, in the name of the Holy Ghost. And that's why I call myself Gaius Christopher Martin St. Julian of Malakir. Joe said she never heard of Malakir. Well, that's not surprising, because if you look at what they did to David's children and their intent to silence the liturgy of Gallicanism and to silence free thought on the continent of Europe, and the specific intent of not just the Catholic Church, but the Anglican Church, is documented their intent to silence the teachings of Gallicanism. And this is 1679, folks. You know, when Thomas Paine said it was the history of the Christian church to keep man in ignorance of God and his governance, he meant that the church, not just the Catholic Church, but the Anglican Church, were both involved in silencing a man's thoughts on truth. They don't want you to know the truth. They don't want you to know Jesus. They don't want you to know God is real. And they do not want you to know that I am here and that I exist. Where do you hear my story? They don't want you to believe it. You guys need to wake up to the fact the U.S. government is a master manipulator of lies, deceit, deception, misrepresentation, obfuscation, projection, profusion. They work for Lucifer. It is their job to lie. That's what they do. If you don't believe me, just ask the former head of the CIA, Pompeo. He told you exactly what they were instructed to do. Now, my point is I want you all to understand that anybody pays the U.S. government one single dime, anybody pays the tax office of Virginia, state, one dime, one penny, assumes to take control of that property for any reason whatsoever, they are at war with God, the human race, the human salvation of this nation and this world. And they are at war with the kingdom of David, Peter, Jacob, Judea, Isaac. Let me rephrase that. They are at war with Isaac, Abraham, Jacob, Judea, King David, King Solomon, Julius Augustus Caesar, Simon Peter, Jesus Christ, and God himself. Because you're at war with the truth. And if you're at war with the truth, and you're a paid liar, you're just a pathetic monkey, not a human. Anyway. Let's talk about Joe for just a minute. Joe said, "Afternoon, Mr. Julian. Would you be the same Christopher Julian who was property located in Ararat, Virginia? If so, what you went through there, I am going through now. If you will confirm for me that you are the same Christopher Julian, I have something of importance to talk with you about regarding your Ararat, Virginia property." I was pointed out that she had some information regarding the property. Jeff had contacted me, so the information is that they intended to auction that property off for failure to pay taxes. Let me explain something, folks. Taxation without representation is pure theft. That's all it is. And they've been intent to extort and steal from me that property since the day I purchased. And the criminal filings in the federal, state, and local courts prove it. It's just a matter of who gets to be the judge, because you can't let the judge be the mafia. That's who rules the U.S. government and has ruled and run the U.S. government. Admittedly, on tape, they gave you that information in the 1990s. I documented it in the book. There is no lawyers, judges, or representatives in the United States who represent God, truth, justice. They all are paid liars for Lucifer. And you cannot have justice from a court run by the mafia. You can't let them be their own judge. You must separate them from being their own judge. And that's why trial by jury and representative government is the heart and lungs of liberty. But we don't have a representative government. We need a representative society, a representative civil society jury, a jury of peers. And that's why Madison and Jefferson fought for the U.S. to get a republic. Because in a republic, every trial is by jury. And the usurpation of the U.S. Republic was a criminal act by the Mafia. Yes, the Mafia took control of the U.S. government in 1803, not in 1960. You see, if you read and study and understand history, so you learn from prior mistakes, the Enlightenment, the age of reason and common sense, told the human race then that these people ruled the world in despotism. They couldn't stop it. They left that to the next generation, or actually they left it to a generation that had global communications because they weren't capable of amassing an army to bring down Satan's paid puppets. And that brings me to that very popular video on X out of Europe about no one ever defended human rights of people from the oligarchs, the kings, no king ever, and that's just a blatant out lie. And what Mark Twain would call the most cowardly of lies, because it's a half-truth of stupidity. Ignorance, stupidity of history. Completely ignorant of European history to make such a statement. I want you to understand, anybody pays the state of Virginia, anybody's paying taxes to any state, federal, local taxation right now is funding the Mafia and the war against them and their future and their survival and the future of their progeny and the future of the human race. And that's what you call stupid. You know, you don't aid your oppressor in beating you to death, although you guys all of you are in love with the oppressor and your chains of oppression. You don't realize that nationalism of Zionist Jews is all about maintaining the prison farms for Satan. That's why God told you that humanity lived in oneness and unity with God and their humanity. There was no borders, no tribes, no sexual divisions. You're human or you're a monkey. And humans are smart enough to know the laws of equity. These people wouldn't pass kindergarten because they do not believe in nor abide by the laws of equity. Do unto others as you'd have others do unto you. These people are criminally insane, and society itself, in general, globally, is a pile of sociopath, flying monkey idiots because their minds are filled with errors. They have believed what Satan wanted them to believe. So let's get this straight, Miss whoever you are. I can't even remember your name now. Up in Patrick County attempting to sell my property or tax my property for the devil. You are at war with God. You are at war with your own salvation. You are at war with the human race. and you are at war with the salvation of the human race, serving Lucifer, and you are abandoning any and all chances of keeping your soul. So take it to heart. I mean it. And you might not think I'm God. Oh, I don't believe that. I'm having a hard time, except I know what the philosophy, I know what it all means. I understand the truth. What I warn you all about is I didn't write, if I wrote this prophecy, I did stir 3,000 years ago and I don't remember it all. But I tell you what, here's the thing. I don't know. I didn't know until I was 60 years old I had anything to do with the kingdom of David or the religion of Christianity. No idea. Yes, I grew up in a Protestant Presbyterian household, and my parents, this is being honest, my parents were, when I was a child, born and raised a child from age 0 to 6, they were Protestant Presbyterians who attended church and sent me to kindergarten. Sent me to, not kindergarten, but, they sent me to kindergarten at the church. I went to Bible study at the church as a child, little baby. Right? However, both of my parents, and this is being honest, I loved them both. I loved my mother especially. I loved my father. I didn't know my father till I was in my 20s. But both of them were adult children. And it's sad to say that, but it's true. And the reason it's true is they grew up in the same despotism we did. They've had the government at war with their lives and their prosperity and their potential and their future and their knowledge since the day they were born. So had my grandparents. This perpetual war by Lucifer against humanity and the human race, and perpetual ritualistic abuse, is documented human history from the fall of the Roman Republic until the founding of the U.S. government. And I want you to pay heed. The founding of the U.S. government is founded on the beliefs of Gallicanism, Gallic Christianity. It's founded on Gallicanism and the rights, human rights, life, liberty, freedom, justice, and equality of all. That's the founding of America's republic. It's founded on Gallicanism. It's founded on the religion of God. And people say, well, God has nothing to do with the United States. Well, the problem is you just don't understand your history. You don't understand. You think religion is religion. You don't understand Jesus didn't teach religion. One of the big teachings, all the earliest teachings of Jesus is that people fail in their civic duty to watch what their government's actually doing. So I've been defending the American public since I filed that first lawsuit in 2012. And I've been defending you against the New World Order and the mafia running your U.S. government since that time. Most of you don't want to hear what I have to say, don't believe what I'm saying. Haven't listened to a word I've said. I told Josephine, she's one of the first people to actually ask questions. And that's a refreshing thing, seeing as the truth is, too, that since about 2012, when I started posting my complaints on X about the judges all being bought and paid for, I think that's when the CIA stepped in and put me in a box. In other words, most of all my community, in fact, right now, I can Look at this damn thing on the email. You see, this AI is monitoring everything I've written. My blog post at Blue Ridge Springs, INV, if you look at the whole distribution over time of actual access of that information, people looking at it and reviewing it, it's like a subset of the CIA. Okay? It's like the only people who actually had access to it are subsets of the CIA. And YouTube is another example. Actually, YouTube, Rumble, Substack, they're all the same. There's very little that I believe actually gets outside the mental prison box that we are in on our internet, so to speak. They can single out any single individual based on your phone number, your social security number, your whatever. Your every single I and T of what's in your digital world, they have access to, and they can control who sees it and who doesn't. They can control who's watching. See, I got this letter from Joe Taylor, but as I said, in all honesty, I have not engaged with a single person on social media in my entire life now that has actually appeared to be an adult human. They all appear to be or have been members of Luciferian cults, all part of Lucifer's New World Order team. And I mean, that's true of the book I wrote. And how many times did it get downloaded? How many people read it? How many people actually asked a question? Or how many just assumed something wasn't true when they didn't bother to investigate it? The thing is, yeah, I don't mean any disrespect to Joe. I don't really know her, but what she's told me, I believe her. And I believe that she is a victim of the war just like me and my wife and every other human being on this planet today. We are all victims of the war that Lucifer set out in the Middle Ages. He's been on this war since 490 BC. So he began this war. His family, the Rothschild's family, began the war on God in 490 BC, or the war on truth. Because you see, if everybody knows the truth, then we can't be deceived. Problem is getting you to understand and believe the truth. And here's one big one. No one on this planet today, living today, not one single soul living on this planet today should have any question in their mind as to the existence of God or having knowledge, not having knowledge of God. The idea that they just have to believe or have believe and have faith in God. It's not about faith. Read your Bibles. It's about having knowledge of God. Intellectual knowledge. Where does knowledge come from? Logic, reason, knowledge, understanding of facts and history and true things. The truth. You cannot presume that any knowledge that we have today on this planet among humans came from anywhere else other than the intelligent creator who created this environment and every living thing in it. You may not picture You keep wanting to picture God as some little old man upstairs in a room wielding out orders for, dealing with your daily life. But you never stop to think about simply the essence of a Holy Spirit of creative intelligence that is created, intelligently created all life on this planet. You want to reject logic, reason, and knowledge and intelligence of that creator because you haven't spent time investigating who is God. And what is all this about? You took for granted whatever Satan told you. You have lived your life believing what you've been taught and told by who else? Lucifer. The Rothschilds have been controlling your education systems from elementary school through college since the day you were born. And they've done that for every generation prior to. And that's the really scary thing about the operations of these cults and their RICO pyramid hierarchy is that it rolls over generation after generation. So if your grandfather was a mafia puppet, it's likely that his son became a mafia puppet. And if his son became, and George H.W. Bush, Al Gore, these people are prime examples of that. The Kennedys, they're all prime examples of it. Adam Kissinger, Snowden. Snowden is his family was tied up with the government before. These people are likely multi-generational corrupted families whose it continues generation after generation. They continue to be Luciferian, and continue to support the mafia's operations because their families did. They're corrupted by the very fact of their family history. They're born into it. That's Elon Musk. That's Bill Gates. That's especially Donald Trump. These people were born into the mafia. They were born into Luciferian occultism. They were born into servitude of the devil for money, power, and fame. That's all I got for right now, but I hope to be providing more information with my next actually thought through, scripted, and published documentary. This is a off the cuff first shot at thoughts on tape outside the box with CB. As far as I'm concerned, until somebody else shows up to be Jesus, until somebody else shows up and demonstrates the fruits of their labor in trying to defend truth, justice, and equality for all, someone else shows up from the kingdom of David. The bloodline is not small in the United States. Renee St. Julian became one of the most prolific Julian bloodlines in the U.S. So you're all from the kingdom of David, whether you know it or not. You haven't done your homework. Anyway, I'm the one who wound up at the gates of hell, pounding on the door for truth, justice, and equality, and my human rights. And these people who are trying to want to take that property, I own that property now. In fact, according to the laws of humanity and the human race, I own this planet. And I am the law. I make the law. I interpret the law. As King of Kings, it is my duty to decide what's right and what's wrong. And I can tell you, Lucifer running the world is entirely wrong. And Lucifer trying to tax me when he fails to provide my human rights, my representation, when he has betrayed the human race for the theft of our minds, bodies, and souls, needs to go. And the people need to stand up and start defending the truth, because that's the whole point of Jesus dying on the cross. You didn't stand up to defend him. You let God's child get crucified because you stood there ignorantly to do nothing. And the truth is, if you don't defend the truth, if you can't defend the absolute truth, then there is no justice for all, is there? Did Jesus get justice? Did Socrates get justice? They both got served with injustice. And the fact is society sat there and watched them get murdered for defending the absolute truth, exactly like I'm doing today, and did nothing. Like Albert Einstein said, they'll watch and they'll do nothing. Because you're too lazy, you're too ignorant, and you're too pathetic to stand up and with the moral courage to stand up and do what's right by defending the truth instead of whining like little children who can't do nothing. You're puppets. I'm going to stop there for now and maybe pick up on this some more in my next Thoughts Outside the Box with CB on.